Alright then. Let's start the screening of your crime scene. This is going to be the best part of the whole year.
With this footage, there'll be no excuse for what you've done.
I told you time and time again, I'm not having an affair. Please don't go through with this stupid nonsense.
Mum must have gotten hold of evidence you did not want her to get from the hidden camera. You're in such a damn panic right now. It's obvious.
No, I'm not getting panicked. I'm just trying to stop the impending doom.
Whatever it is, let's all take a look. I think we all need to see what my wife's been on about once and for all.
And what are you talking about, Mr. Milo? You're a penniless hooker, is what you really are. And everyone here is going to see how the mistress of STDs seduces a man. My name is Joanna, and I'm a 28-year-old office woman working for a company that sells high-quality pet goods. I married my husband, Chris, 3 years ago. After we got married, I moved in with Chris's parents.
In order to save money for our own home one day, I suggest we go stay with my parents. We'll save a lot more money that way because we won't have to pay rent.
But are you sure it's going to be as economical as you think? Your parents did tell us that if we're going to live with them, we have to pay some life costs. I'm not saying this isn't a good idea, but I just think we should consider things carefully, since this is a big investment. To recap, yes, my parents-in-laws asked that we pay some living expenses like water and electricity.
I think that's common for families, honestly. And we only have to pay for your living expenses, Joanna. And because it's my family's house, I don't have to pay.
But then I'm the only one who has to pay a lot of expenses.
I'll save whatever you have to pay for yourself from my own salary. And you've also got a decent amount of savings from your cabaret days. I'm sure we can work something out.
That's not entirely true, honey. I was only a cabaret girl when I was having trouble paying my school fees. Now I'm just an ordinary company employee. Even if I do have some money saved up, it isn't anything decent at all.
Ah, Joanna, you were so hot during those days.
Chris, don't tell me you don't still like cabarets, do you?
Perish the thought, darling. No, I'm completely devoted to you, and I don't want you to forget that.
Yes, you heard right. It's not exactly something I'm extremely proud of, personally, but before I got married, I used to work in a cabaret club. A friend from college invited me, and I worked there for a short time. Honestly, it was a good job. The pay was decent, and it was a good experience. The only reason why I'm not extremely proud of it is because of where the club is. It was in a dirtier part of downtown, and a lot of gang guys dropped in for a drink. Most times they were very nice people, funny. But every once in a while, some of these bastards get pretty drunk and tries to do some stuff to the girls. Some of these guys were pretty powerful, physically, and one particular instance made me fear for my life. But enough about that. Overall, I think it was a good experience. Now, I found a job that I want to do as a life career, which is accounting. But unfortunately, in the public mind, some people have a harsh view of women who have any experience in that line of occupation. Even if it was just for a short time. Chris's mother was someone who was especially critical of such work. She condemned it, calling it the job for the street rats, and cast a slew of insults in my direction. She also insulted all the exceptionally kind people who I had the pleasure of working with. While I was living with the Milos, I had a bunch of arguments with her big, nagging mouth. Joanna, that skirt is so damn short. Just what the hell are you even doing at the office? Here we go again. I desperately suppressed my frustration as I responded. It's not too short, Mrs. Milo. It's normal, as it always is when I go to work. I've asked you this before, but please stop criticizing what I'm wearing every morning before I head off. Oh, well, you can't blame me for being worried about where you're going for work. I'm always concerned you'll start working at a cabaret again. Perish the thought, Mrs. Milo. Please. I find my job at my current company very rewarding. Why would I want to go back to a cabaret? Oh, my, look at the time. I'm running late. See you this evening, Mrs. Milo. My mother-in-law is saying and doing a lot of disparaging things about me because I used to work at a cabaret has pretty much become a daily routine nowadays. Your mother's nagging is terrible, Chris. It's your fault. You told her that I used to work at a cabaret club. I asked too many times to stop with the constant nagging and pickiness. And I want you to tell her too, okay?
Don't make it sound like it's such a big deal, Joanna. More importantly, though, I'm staying with some friends starting tomorrow. We're going to see a concert.
If you have that kind of money to spend, save it instead. Have you forgotten why we decided to live with your parents in the first place?
Oh my god. What do you care about how I spend my money that I made by working my job?
I'm paying for my own living expenses because your parents, or rather, your mother, insists that I do. And yet all you ever do is spend a whole lot of money on fun and games. I felt our love for each other slowly fading, and my mother-in-law started to demand more and more money for living expenses. Joanna, dear, I'm going to buy a new refrigerator. Give me $1,000, if you would, please. $1,000 is not an easy amount to put on the table right here now, Mrs. Milo, and besides, there's nothing wrong with the refrigerator, is there? You guys are living together with us, and because of that, we have to store more stuff in the fridge. And that costs more money for electricity. I'll have to change it to a more efficient model where the electricity consumption is a lot more reasonable. And on other occasions... Mrs. Milo, have you seen my bag? You know, the red one with the black shoulder strap? Oh, yeah, that fancy branded handbag, right? I sold it to a recycling shop. I just hated the design of that wretched thing with a burning passion. Excuse me? Why would you do that, Mrs. Milo? Lest we forget that handbag belonged to me, didn't it? You don't have the right to sell it without my permission. Look it up. It could be considered a crime, you know. Legally, it's equivalent to theft. And what made you think you have the right to talk back at me, Miss Joanna, wife of my firstborn son? I remind you, I'm trying so hard every day putting up with your cabaret-polished vulgarity. A wife should be like a wife, and thus an eco-friendly bag will definitely suffice. You don't need branded goods. Besides, that handbag brought back a handsome price for us. My mother-in-law's ill treatment of me escalated day after day after day. Chris never tried to listen to reason and always justified his mother's actions. Mr. Milo was a workaholic and couldn't give less of a good goddamn about what goes on inside the house. I strongly regretted living under the same roof as my parents-in-law. I commute to work by my own car, and sometimes on the way home from work, I would sometimes give a ride to my boss who lived down the street. His name is Mr. Breton, and he's 5 years older than me. He's strict about work, but as a man, he was very calm and had a very friendly personality. I could always count on him because he was always open to helping me with any doubts I had about something in particular about my work. But then... perhaps my mother-in-law saw me giving Mr. Breton a ride back to his home because she suddenly started to unreasonably accuse me of ridiculous things. Miss Joanna, you were in the car with a guy today, weren't you? I knew it. I damn well knew you still work in a cabaret club. You really can't stop looking for guys to play with, can you? What are you talking about, Mrs. Milo? I'm not looking for guys. At all. Mr. Breton's another employee of my company, and that's all he is. I have no illicit relationship with him. What a disgusting excuse. You're a scumbag for betraying our beloved Chris. My mother-in-law was making such a fuss, and that led Chris himself to suspect me of foul play too.
Hey, what Mum's been saying, is it true, Joanna? Are you having an affair?
Of course not. You really think I would do such a thing, Chris? I was shocked that my own darling husband suspected me of having an affair.
If you're going to have an affair, I think I should do the same.
Is what he said next. And Chris was grinning a diabolical smirk that scrunched up his face into a horrifying way. I suddenly felt my heart become heavier than lead, and every positive emotion I had for Chris went stone cold right then and there. Are you serious? I ask you again, do you honestly think that I would cheat on you?
If you weren't cheating on me, you definitely wouldn't be having that stupid expression on your ugly face.
Chris, how dare you? Oh yeah, now my love for him was lost to abysmal darkness, never to be revived again. From that point onward, I refused to accept any financial requests from my mother-in-law other than the bare necessities. We need some money for the neighborhood association. $500, if you please, bitch. I'm not a member of the neighborhood association, Mrs. Milo. I'm not giving you anything. You won't freaking get away with this, you whore. Get your money and put it in my hand right now. Yeah, when did I ever say I needed your forgiveness, Mrs. Milo? I'm not giving you any money without any circumstantial assurance on how it'll be spent. Does that pea-brain of yours know your place in this house? You realize I can kick your slutty ass out of here, right? If you want to kick me out, I'll gladly leave, Mrs. Milo. I'm totally fine with that. Cheeky now, are we? So help me. I will teach you a damn lesson. I muttered to myself as I watched my mother-in-law walk away. And just what in the world are you spending all that money on, Mrs. Milo? Lately, my mother-in-law seems to be living a more lavish life. Her makeup, her clothes, her general aesthetics looked as though they were made for girls ridiculously younger than her. I started to suspect that the money my mother-in-law was demanding me was probably being used to purchase luxury items. I found out later on that the decent allowance she gets from her well-paid husband was actually the same sort of living expenses that I started paying her when I moved in with the Milos. In other words, all the money I ever give my mother-in-law is all wasted on stupid things for her own personal luxury. I discovered that she really wanted me to be there as her personal ATM. To be there to give her any amount of gold coins and bags of silver she needed to buy her expensive dresses and jewelry. As for Chris, he never dared save a single penny, and often blew much of his salary on fun. I seriously started to wonder how long my life would go on like this, and every day was 24 hours of full depression. After a while, I started to work in the afternoon on weekends. My mother-in-law's behavior suddenly made a complete 180. She took my car out early in the morning, filled it up with gas, and even had it washed. I can't believe you have to work on weekends. Have a nice day, dear. There was absolutely no way Mrs. Milo suddenly had a change of heart and started being nice to me. I immediately started to suspect she was up to something. I went to work, sent away by my mother-in-law, who looked to be in the best mood she'd been in a while. When I came home in the evening, I found my mother-in-law had gone to the hairdresser's and wasn't home. Chris passed me in the hallway, borrowed my car, and went off to gallivant in the city. I was left alone with Mr. Milo, and I prepared dinner for the two of us. I ate with him. So, Mr. Milo, how are things with your Mrs. Milo these days?
What do you mean by that?
I'm sorry. Forget it. It's not important.
All right, then. Ah, yes, Joanna, dear. Turn on the TV, will you? Nice job. Thank you.
Mr. Milo was soon completely focused on the baseball game on TV. He never paid any attention to me anymore that night. He just didn't seem to care about anything at all. Only about his peaceful life with food, water, shelter, and a large television screen. I'm sure he's a good man, but I don't think he realizes that his entire family's crumbling around him. I sighed, got the dishes, washed them, and went upstairs to my room. The next day was a day off, and I slept in that morning. Neither Chris nor my mother-in-law had come home until really late, and both of them were still sleeping too. I was able to spend the morning in peace and quiet. My mother-in-law woke up in the afternoon, and I found her in the living room, doing something on her laptop. Chris was sitting on the sofa talking somewhat quietly with his mother and grinning somewhat ominously. Why did my stomach give me the feeling that something terrible was going to happen pretty soon? Miss Joanna, do you know what this is? It looks like a video camera, Mrs. Milo. That's correct, my dear. 100 points for now. The next question's worth 500 points. What do you think this video camera recorded? I don't know, Mrs. Milo. I guess I lost this round of Jeopardy. Alright, then plug this in here. Now, look at the computer screen. Come now. Joe, my dear, and sit yourself down right here. My father-in-law, completely intrigued by what his wife just said, sat down on the couch next to Chris. My mother-in-law then announced in a loud voice, "All right then, let's start the screening of your crime scene. This is going to be the best part of the whole year." Wait, what?
With this footage, there'll be no excuse for what you've done.
I told you time and time again, I'm not having an affair. Please don't go through with this stupid nonsense.
Mum must have gotten hold of evidence you did not want her to get from the hidden camera. You're in such a damn panic right now, it's obvious.
No, I'm not getting panicked. I'm just trying to stop the impending doom.
Well, whatever it is, let's all take a look. I think we all need to see what my wife's been on about once and for all.
And what are you talking about, Mr. Milo? You're a penniless hooker, is what you really are. And everyone here is going to see how the mistress of STDs seduces a man. I literally had nothing to hide. Mrs. Milo started to play the video in a good mood. And naturally, there was nothing unusual about the footage. It was literally just a simple, plain video of me driving in my car on the parkway just outside our house.
This is you, isn't it, Joanna? You always drive safely. It's incredible.
My father-in-law told me, although his tone sounded bored. Mrs. Milo got impatient and pressed the fast-forward button and skipped ahead in the video. Oh, damn it! Where's that shameless recording of you? Here? I'm pretty sure it's on here somewhere. Eventually, my mother-in-law apparently found what she was looking for, because a grin of pure malice spread across her wrinkled face. On the rather low-quality screen appeared to be a man holding a woman in his arms, and she appeared to be stripping nude enthusiastically. My mother-in-law then begins to explain, beaming with pride. Looky here, everyone. This is who this whore really is. Oh my god. You're really into this bloke. You just can't wait to feel him where many have gone before, can you? My father-in-law, for the first time ever, raised his voice.
This is Joanna? Explain the meaning of this, woman.
How dare you betray our family? We will never forgive you. Any cheating bitch can get the frick out of our house. My eyes widened, and Chris gulped. Or perhaps he just made a strange noise, I don't know. What I do know is that he turned dangerously pale. At that moment, the man who was laying on top of the woman in the screen, thrusting vigorously, tilted his face towards the camera. He didn't seem to realize it was there, but his identity was crystal clear. It was none other than Chris himself. My own husband. Wait, what?
Chris, my boy.
And who is that woman, honey?
Mum, turn off that video. Turn it off.
Yep, you guessed it. And I hope you forgive me for going into a bit of detail earlier. The video displayed the footage of Chris making love to a woman he's cheating on me with in my own car. I felt like throwing up, and I almost did all over the laptop. It turns out that after I get home from work every night nowadays, Chris had been meeting up with this woman. My mother-in-law probably only saw a portion of the footage the hidden camera had recorded and thought she saw me in the video.
Chris, you stupid, slimy bastard.
Wait, Hang on. Chris. This woman, I recognize her. She used to work with me in the same cabaret club. That can't be Raina, can it? I took a closer look at the woman in the video, who was now sprawled out, breathless, her hair all over the place. Yep, the hair gave it all away. Give me a good 50 years, I'd still be able to recognize that hair of a legendary beauty. It was Raina, one of my closest friends who worked with me as a cabaret girl. She, too, was fairly close with Chris. But I didn't think that they had this kind of relationship. The fact that the relationship was so lewd, even after Chris got married, was just insane. Chris was cowering in silence by this point. If my eyes didn't deceive me, he was actually trembling. His mother said to him, "Oh, Chris, you do know it's all Joanna's fault, right? With such a skinny, unattractive body like that, even my own son, who's the sweetest, most faithful angel in the world, would turn his eyes towards other women. Better women." Mrs. Milo's outrageous words made me lose my patience altogether. "Prepare to be destroyed, madam." I reached into my bag and took out another video camera. And this question is worth 1,000 points. Mrs. Milo, what do you think this video camera recorded? My parents-in-law and their son were stunned because of my sudden actions. I unplugged my mother-in-law's camera from the computer and connected it to my own camera. And this video contains raw footage of what she did after going to the beauty parlor every week at night. And in a nutshell, I think Mr. Milo is going to enjoy watching this very much. If you guessed that I knew Mrs. Milo was also being unfaithful, well then, I applaud you. Yes, I did know she was a snake in the grass. I knew that my mother-in-law started to take drastic measures to look oddly young. I knew why she was spending so much money. And above all else, I knew exactly what she did right after she pulled into our driveway. On evenings when I thought my mother-in-law would borrow my car, I set up a video camera in secret, hidden from sight. And this was going to be the culmination of all my efforts. Extra! Extra! Limited time only. The screening of Mrs. Josephine Milo's crime scene is about to commence. This is going to be the best part of the whole year. No. Please, no. The footage showed the shocking scene of my mother-in-law holding onto a young, handsome man who looked like a male stripper, removing his clothes. Oh my god, you're so cute. You're so cute. You're so cute. It's just the tip of the iceberg of what she was yelling. I was honestly surprised she could be this dirty.
Mom? What the hell is this? Explain this to me. Both of you.
No, honey, it's not what it looks like. I made a little mistake. Mrs. Milo, I'm afraid you're the one who's getting the hell out of this house. And so my bitter life, married to a scumbag unworthy of love or respect, came to an end. After that, of course, I divorced Chris. I contacted Raina, telling her there was something I needed to talk to her about. Even though I'd stopped working as a cabaret girl, she and I were close enough to meet at least once a month, and we text each other pretty often too. We met in our usual coffee shop, and we talked it over. It turns out that Chris had told Raina that I was cheating on him too, so it was basically fine for her to be active elsewhere, so to speak. Chris told me he had proof you were having an affair. But the bastard, he lied to me, and he used me. Listen to me, Raina, even if he did lie to you, and perhaps use you, you still gave consent to having an affair with a married man. I am sure you already know that's a pretty big deal. Huh. You're just jealous because he didn't like the fact that you got out of my line of work and got a day job. You just can't deal with the fact that cabaret girls are more attractive than women of the office by far. I'm sorry that the man you married cheated on you, but honestly, you kind of had it coming. Be glad it was me and not some other girl instead. And that terminated my friendship with her. Right then and there, I decided to demand Raina a lump sum of alimony for the affair. My mother-in-law, on the other hand, had been using a dating app and was repeatedly cheating on her husband. When she was about to get money from me, in addition to the money she got from her husband, she got more and more addicted to it. Mr. Milo filed for divorce against her, and along with her son Chris, they were both kicked out of the house. Chris and my mother-in-law moved into the apartment of Raina, his lover. Why do I have to take care of this old hag? Old hag? You better watch yourself.
Look, we have nowhere to go. I'm in this mess because you and I got caught having an affair. The three of us can help each other out.
And I'm asking why the hell your ancient fossil is tagging along. Raina later found out about Chris's affair with her solely because of my mother-in-law, and her behavior towards Mrs. Milo became even harsher. It seems she's calling her ex-husband every day, crying and complaining about Raina and her psychological abuse. I still visit Mr. Milo from time to time, which is why I'm able to tell you how they're doing now. Chris now has a part-time job in addition to his day job, and is working day and night to pay off his alimony debt. And his mother was able to land a job at Raina's Cabaret Club as a janitor. My old mother-in-law, who used to severely criticize cabarets, and the girls that have experience working in them, now works in one herself, albeit not in the real business. It's still very ironic and so hilarious. As for me, I'm still working my day job after the divorce. I've overcome the difficult experience of divorce and I'm finally able to focus well on my work. And in recognition of my efforts, I was just promoted to senior manager. And I'd like to take a moment to thank my boss, Mr. Breton, for his continued support throughout this whole time. Recently, he's been asking me out to have dinner with him, privately. A part of me has honestly had enough of men in life, but a bigger, more important part of me knows very well that you can't move on if you keep dwelling on the past. Give me a little more time, and I think I'm willing to go on at least one date with him. I'm thinking about it, is all I'll say for now. And hopefully things will look up even more in due time.
All right, everyone's presentations are done. Nick, the manager, said as he tried to move the discussion forward. Excuse me, I haven't. I recently found out something. Nick interrupted me and began to speak. There's apparently someone in this department who didn't graduate high school and is just a part-timer. Meetings should be for employees only. Absolutely right. His lackey, Mike, of course, agreed with Nick. I'm leaving. After leaving the meeting room, I started to shut down my computer. I noticed that an email had arrived, not in my personal inbox, but in the company's shared email. Thinking, there's no point in speaking up, no one will listen, I went home quietly. The next day, I heard a commotion from Nick's desk. He was staring at his computer screen, his face pale. Nick! Is something wrong? Mike looked at the screen with him. And he turned even paler than Nick. Why is he so angry? Knowing the reason for Mike's distress, I thought to myself, serves them right. My name is Adam. My mother passed away when I was in the 9th grade, and I was raised by my father. Well, you could hardly call it being raised. After my mother passed, my father changed. He drowned his sorrows in alcohol, and though he still went to work, he squandered our living expenses on horse racing. Because of that, I had to start working part-time as soon as I entered high school. Every month, I went to the convenience store with bills in hand that couldn't be auto-deducted from my father's account. Even though I endured it because I didn't want to be alone, I reached my limit in my second year of high school and dropped out. I found a live-in job at a distant inn. Thank you for everything. The day I left home, my father, still staring at the TV, spoke. "Take care." That was our last conversation. Back then, 18 wasn't the age of majority, so I needed my father's permission to work, and I couldn't hide my place of employment. Yet, my father never visited me even once. I kept working just to survive, and before I knew it, I was 42. Years of hard work paid off, and I was transferred to the headquarters. I was thrilled to be recognized by the company, as I thought I'd be working in the field until retirement due to my lack of formal education. Listen up. Our work can change the future of our employees. Don't drag us down. On my first day after the transfer, Nick, dressed in an expensive suit, spoke sternly. There was a reason for this. Our inn was located in a prominent tourist destination, known so well that everyone in the state could sing its commercial jingle. At its peak, we had 5 locations within the state. But that was long ago. Due to financial difficulties and aging facilities, only the place where I had worked for many years and the original establishment remained. I was prepared to lose my job anytime, but now there was a glimmer of hope. With the rise of social media, the tourist area where the inn was located started gaining attention again. Depending on how hard the sales department, where I was transferred, worked, we could either thrive or be forced to give up this prime location to the new hotel chains continuously popping up. For Nick, who had switched careers from another industry to strengthen our sales, this was a battle he couldn't afford to lose. I understood why he had to be strict. "I will do my best." Nick sneered at my enthusiastic declaration. "Did you not hear what I said?" "I'm sorry." I thought I was listening carefully. Out of habit from years of customer service, I apologized reflexively, though I had no idea what had offended him. Someone was watching me with a smirk. In this department, there are those who are expected to excel and those who have been shoved here because they have nowhere else to go. You are the latter. It was Mike, the section chief. He's 7 years younger, at 35. But he was called to headquarters much earlier than I was and had been moving around within the headquarters ever since. I'm not jealous, but I can't accept that he's my boss. Graduating from a prestigious university, he has an unusually high pride and caused many problems as a newbie, making things very difficult for me when I was the front desk leader. When I found out Mike was transferred to the sales department a month before me, I was disheartened. Mike is right. With just a middle school diploma, there's not much you can do. Don't even think about achieving results. As if I didn't exist, Nick remarked, "I'm thirsty." Mike eagerly ran to the coffee maker. It seems Mike is Nick's lackey. I regretted being happy about my transfer to headquarters, wishing I had stayed on site forever. Send a direct mail to every company on this list by the end of the day. Nick only assigned me tasks that even a new graduate could handle. What? There are over 1,000 companies. You want me to send to all of them by today? Yes, if you and your fellow misfits split the work, even those with nowhere else to go should finish by today. I glanced at the employees typing away expressionlessly. They were worn out from customer service, only thinking about leaving on time, or were women reassigned after having children, with zero motivation for work. Even Sam, a new graduate from the same university as Mike, who was supposed to be among the expected achievers, had no enthusiasm for the job, having joined the company wanting to do customer service. "I don't care what they say, I plan to quit any time," he said. Only Nick and Mike were highly motivated, making all the decisions between the two of them. I originally only wanted to work at the inn to survive and had no particular attachment to this job. I swallowed my words, thinking I had no right to reprimand them. About a month after the transfer, Nick told us with a frustrated look. To commemorate the 50th anniversary, we've decided to create a plan exclusive for one group per day. Originally, Mike and I were supposed to come up with it, but our president, Mr. Thompson, insists on hearing everyone's opinions. So, you all get a chance. As Nick explained, Mike began handing out prints. Make sure not to embarrass Nick. If your ideas are half-baked, you'll have to redo them. It seemed that they had printed his handwritten notes by Mr. Thompson, which included several questions and a section for free responses. It made sense why Nick had to seek our input, given that all responses had to be submitted to Mr. Thompson. We were given a week to think about it, and a meeting was scheduled to compile our ideas. My plan is to let guests enjoy both the old and modern America. Nick began the presentations. Guests would watch a master confectioner at a nearby traditional sweet shop make sweets in front of them. The welcome drink would be premium tea in a bottle. Nick's plan was certainly attractive. After his presentation, Nick called on us to present in the order we were seated. Just as I stood up for my turn. All right, everyone's presentations are done. Excuse me, I haven't. I recently found out something. Nick interrupted me. There's someone in this department who didn't graduate high school and is just a part-timer. He was likely talking about me. I joined the company as a part-timer and was made a full-time employee when I turned 20. That was 20 years ago, so Nick and Mike probably had no chance to know until recently. Meetings should be for employees only. Absolutely right. After that, Nick kept creating opportunities to solicit everyone's opinions, purposefully excluding me from speaking. The meeting unexpectedly heated up and went past the scheduled end time. A few people asked to leave, and the discussion continued with the remaining few. Still here? Normally, you'd leave in that situation. Though I had no attachment to the job initially, hearing kind words from customers made me want to make them happier. For someone like me, with nowhere to go, the inn was my home and customer service was my life. I felt pathetic about my current self. I'm leaving. I left the conference room and started shutting down my computer. I noticed an email had arrived, not in my personal inbox, but in the company's shared email. Thinking no one would listen to what I had to say anyway, I quietly went home. The next day, while preparing the DM as instructed, I heard a commotion from Nick's desk. In his haste to stand up, he hit his knee on the desk. He stared at his computer screen, his face pale. Nick! What's wrong? Mike, thinking he should be the first to rush over, approached Nick while still wearing his coat. He peered at the screen with Nick. And he turned even paler than Nick. Why is he so angry? Who is responsible for this company? Nick, more irritated than ever, asked, and Mike answered without checking. Probably Sam. Sam wasn't there because he was attending a morning training session for new hires. Nick gave up on getting angry and returned his gaze to the screen. They were looking at an email that arrived right after the end of the working day yesterday. Apparently, no one, including me, had checked it before leaving. The email was from a large company that used us for their annual employee trips. The president and executives of that company also frequently used our services personally. President of the company, Mr. Mason himself had declared that neither he nor his company would ever use our services again. Well, some companies cancel their employee trips or stop using our services due to financial struggles. Let's just move on. Mike kept wiping the sweat from his forehead with a handkerchief. Knowing why Mike was so agitated, I quietly watched their interaction. Do you know how much revenue we get from that company? We can find other guests to fill the rooms, but we'll lose the banquet costs, gift shop revenue, rental car fees, and more. Moreover, the gifts were supposed to be prepared by the traditional confectionery shop involved in Nick's proposed plan. If it's known that we incurred such a huge loss at this critical time, Nick's position in the company would be jeopardized. Nick took a deep breath, seemingly trying to calm himself. All right, Mike. Go to New York right now and apologize to Mr. Mason. What? You're coming with me, right? I have urgent work to do. I trust you, which is why I'm entrusting this to you. Please. Mike, believing Nick's sincerity, agreed with a determined look on his face, saying, yes. That's Nick for you. Even if Mike went to apologize, Nick would shift all the blame onto him if the client didn't change their mind. Well, it was Mike's fault to begin with, so it served him right. About 3 hours later, Sam answered a call from somewhere and repeatedly apologized, saying, I'm very sorry. Everyone watched to see what was happening. After ending the call, he informed Nick with a weary tone. When Mike arrived at the client's company, he only made things worse, further infuriating Mr. Mason. He was demanding, get his boss here immediately. It was no wonder Sam was exhausted, dealing with such a call right after returning from training. What is that idiot doing? All right, Adam, you're coming with me. If sacrificing Mike didn't work, then I must be next. Normally, I'd want to refuse at all costs, but I saw an opportunity in this situation. If I can be of assistance, I'd be happy to join you. I immediately followed Nick, and we flew to New York. When we introduced ourselves at the reception, it became clear how serious the situation was, as the receptionist personally escorted us to the president's office. Angry voices leaked through the door, making both Nick and me uneasy. "Excuse me. I'm Nick, the supervisor. I understand my subordinate has caused you trouble, and I deeply apologize." Nick, with his experience in the corporate world, knew enough to offer an apology before excuses. However, his customer service skills left much to be desired. I sighed as I saw Mike trembling like a small dog in the corner of the room. "What kind of training are you giving your subordinates?" Mr. Mason glared at Nick with a red face. The intensity of his gaze made even Nick take a step back. Regrettably, I joined this company only 2 years ago and was unaware of Mike's issues. I should have identified his shortcomings sooner. Indeed, I should have realized sooner. No sensible person would come to apologize and then give a lengthy presentation on the drawbacks of not using their in. Nick froze, his mouth slightly open. Suspecting the worst, I picked up the documents that had fallen to the floor. It seemed Mike hastily prepared these documents on the plane, listing the disadvantages. Disadvantage 1: if you change the venue for the company trip, employees might suspect it's for cost-cutting reasons, leading to a negative impression. Reading it aloud half-jokingly, Nick snatched the papers from my hand and checked the contents with a furious expression. Among the stack of documents was a receipt from a nearby convenience store's copy machine. I felt a pang of dread, hoping he hadn't shown the receipt as well. What do you think he said when I asked what kind of nerve he had to do this? I'm very sorry." Faced with the dire situation, Nick must have thought there was nothing left to do but apologize. In a voice smaller than I'd ever heard from him, he uttered words of apology. He said, "I'm a Harvard graduate. I don't believe I said anything wrong." "Mike, what have you done?" Forgetting his plan to pin the blame on Mike, Nick yelled loudly, even in front of Mr. Mason. "I didn't do anything wrong." "You're still saying that? Look at him." Mike pointed at me with a shaking hand. "I was assigned to headquarters in my 20s and now I'm a section chief. This guy only made it to headquarters at 42. Everything I've done proves I was right. So why are we losing the contract?" Having said his piece, Mike collapsed to the floor. "Of course. You were sent there because you had nowhere else to go." Mike never expected to hear such words from someone he looked down upon. He lunged at me, and Nick hurriedly stepped in to stop him. "Mr. Thompson told me Mike is a quick thinker, and to take good care of him." There's no way he was pushed aside. "Don't make things worse here. He didn't say quick thinker, he said only quick-witted, didn't he?" I don't remember that part." I recalled the many troubles Mike caused when he was a newbie. When Mike was on the front line, his pride was so high that he never apologized to customers. Customer service, especially in our job, doesn't work alone. It brings both good and bad situations. If the front staff or housekeepers made mistakes, or the cleaning company didn't properly clean a room, one had to apologize to the customers regardless of personal fault. Mike, in such situations, would never apologize, insisting he wasn't at fault. This often angered customers, and as the front desk leader, I frequently had to apologize on his behalf. He caused complaints and disrupted operations, which is why he was quickly moved to headquarters. In departments where he didn't interact directly with customers, his quick thinking was beneficial and things went well. But it seemed his flaws were starting to show. Corporate reservations are supposed to be entered into the system by the sales representative. But a quick check yesterday revealed that more than 10 items were missing from the client's reservation. The handover document clearly stated what needed to be prepared. Why didn't you enter it into the system? Why do we have to give them special treatment? Filling rooms near the banquet hall, setting up all the food in advance. Specifying the brand of wine, they're too demanding. No wonder he always angered customers, I thought, feeling a headache coming on. Grouping them in rooms near the banquet hall is for our benefit too. It makes it easier for the staff to set up beds and serve breakfast since everyone's schedule is synchronized. As for the other requests, Mr. Mason suggested them to lighten our load. I didn't know that. Nick finally seemed to realize that Mike was the one who had angered the client. What did you say to them? I just told them we wouldn't give them special treatment anymore. We shouldn't waste effort on things that don't bring in money. I was utterly exasperated at his lack of understanding of customer service. Of course, we shouldn't comply with unreasonable demands. But carrying over successful practices from past stays makes customers feel remembered and enhances their experience. Good memories encourage repeat visits. That's part of our job. I looked down at Mike, who was sitting on the floor. In our job, nothing is a waste. Mr. Thompson likely moved you to the sales department, hoping you'd finally understand this. How do you think he feels now that you failed to meet his expectations? Mike, tears in his eyes, fled the president's office. I was amazed he still hadn't apologized. You have it tough, Adam. It's okay, we're all employees of the same company. I deeply apologize for this disrespectful incident. Especially after all the care you've shown us. If it weren't for you, Adam, I really would have stopped staying here. When I heard you were moving to the sales department, I was willing to reconsider if you handled it. Seeing us talk so amicably, Nick's face contorted. Do you two know each other? Adam's service is excellent. I always requested him specifically. Normally, we don't accept specific staff requests, but we made an exception for Mr. Mason, adjusting my shifts accordingly. He had personally stayed at our hotel just before my transfer, and during casual conversation, I mentioned, I'm moving to the sales department soon. If I hadn't told him then, things could have been much worse. Please continue to take care of us. I look forward to it. On the return flight, Nick awkwardly offered me a can of beer. It's still working hours. Of course, I had no intention of forgiving him for a single beer. Nick might try to pin everything on Mike and avoid any consequences. While pondering this, a startling fact came to light. Nick, the tea bottles for the plan have arrived. I handed Nick a bottle labeled with our inn's name. They look good. What are you talking about? These are plastic bottles. I had assumed we would use the trendy, high-end bottling tea. But what arrived were ordinary plastic bottles of tea with customized labels. The only unique aspect was the label, which had the inn's name, making it look customized. Upon further investigation, I discovered that a substantial amount of money was set to be paid to the tea company. It was priced like bottling tea. Does this plastic bottle really cost $100 each? The tea inside is specially blended for us. The extra cost is for that. Wouldn't it be better to use another tea company? Or is there a specific reason we must use this one? As Nick continued to make excuses, I showed him a printed email. I informed the tea company's president, Mr. Mitchell, that we discovered irregular payments and he confessed. He said you two were high school classmates and planned to split the extra money. That idiot. Why did he confess? That's not important. You should worry about yourself, this could turn into a police matter. Opening the bottle cap, I suggested. How about calming down with this tea? It supposedly has a relaxing effect. Nick drank the tea frantically. In the following days, decisions were made about their fates. Mike was reassigned to the General Affairs Department, with no chance of transfer or promotion, as per Mr. Thompson's orders. As for Nick, since the payment to the tea company hadn't yet been made, he narrowly avoided legal trouble. Instead, he was encouraged to leave the company, and to avoid further complications, Nick submitted his resignation. Rumor has it that connections between HR departments have made it difficult for him to find new employment. Even though it was good to have those two gone, something unexpected happened in the sales department. Everyone became motivated and united in refining the 50th anniversary plan. In the end, my plan was adopted. We collaborated with the Tourist Information Center to provide personalized guides. The plan, tailored to the number of guests, was truly special for the 50th anniversary. Hey, is Adam's family coming to stay? I immediately booked that special plan for my family. Sam noticed it on the reservation list and quickly picked up on it. Yes, I'm inviting my father. That's great. I might invite my parents too. I lacked the courage to face my father just as Adam. But here, with the confidence Mr. Mason praised, I felt ready. The 50th anniversary plan was a perfect opportunity to reconnect with my father. I hoped to bring back the days when we could laugh together as we once did.